Looking live at our Tokyo shot this morning at 7:40 at night. Tokyo Bay there and the city all lit up and set to receive the athletes, the support staff in under 50 days for the Olympic Games. The International Olympic Committee holding its final executive board meeting before leaving for the Olympics. There continues to be momentum and a belief that they are pushing ahead to hosting them, but there continue to be safety concerns. Tokyo and a number of other prefectures still in a state of emergency will be till the end of June. There is a fourth wave of COVID cases. Numbers are high. Vaccination is low, less than 5% of the Japanese population. This morning, a top virologist in the country spoke out saying it is 100% impossible to have a zero-risk games, and that's having an impact on people set to work on those games. The volunteers who are key. On Japanese broadcaster today, word that 3,500 volunteers have quit. These are volunteers specifically who'd have roles in the city, helping people with transportation, for example, and that's in addition to 10,000 volunteers who've also dropped out, volunteers who were supposed to have roles specifically at Olympic venues, which got us wondering about what is happening within that volunteer corps. They are such an important part of the hosting of any Olympic Games. And so this morning, we meet Barbara Haltis, who's a volunteer. She is in Hamburg, Germany, going to be back in Tokyo. There's a reason that she is there, but normally in Tokyo. And Barbara, welcome to our program and to Canadians as we introduce you this morning. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
I have a picture of you, Barbara, already in your Olympic volunteer uniform. Let's look at that together. So you already have it. You've already been had that distributed to you. Do you know what your specific role will be or where you'll be working?
Yeah, I'll be at the Olympics as well as the Paralympics. So at the Olympics, I'm in event services at the Ariake Stadium for tennis, and so anything to do with spectators. And for the Paralympics, I'm part of the protocol team and supposedly working in the lounges for the IOC family.
Okay, so lots of interactions with people in your role, one of thousands of roles for volunteers. What kind of protections have you been given? Saw you in a mask there.
Yes, exactly. Well, that was added to our uniforms. So we were given 2 cloth masks. They told us also we're going to get a little bottle of hand sanitizer that was not yet distributed. I guess we get that at the venues, as well as this little PDF booklet that we were supposed to print out, in which we write in for the 14 days before we start our shift, measure our temperatures and write down any symptoms that we might have.
And what about vaccine for you as a volunteer?
No word on that, no testing at all, no vaccines.
So a couple of masks, a tiny bottle of sanitizer, a record for you to keep, and no vaccination. How do you feel about the level of protection you're being given?
Oh, it's absolutely insufficient. We know that there's not going to be 100% safety at all from the virus, no matter it can escape testing, it can't even escape vaccines, but still that would be an added level of protection. But the volunteers, that large group, is completely forgotten, as well as local staff. Think of all the drivers that drive athletes to and from venues. Those are not being talked about.
So is that why I mentioned those huge numbers? 3,500 we're hearing today in the city, 10,000 from the volunteer corps at the venues having quit already. Is that what you think has driven them not to show up?
Oh, absolutely. In addition to, of course, the sexist remarks that were in February when the Tokyo Olympic chief, Mori, eventually had to quit from that. So 1,000 volunteers quit in response to that. This is, I think, the largest part, but also because volunteers are not just concerned for their own safety, but also for the danger of bringing the virus into their communities.
Now, for you, you're in Germany for family reasons, but do plan to be back in time for Tokyo, and you've decided to go ahead at this point and to work as a volunteer. Why then, given all of the things you just said to me?
Well, I joined for personal reasons because I'm interested in it, as well as for professional reasons. I'm a sociologist. I published a book on the Olympics, and that's my research. But I do have to say I want to see first the training at the venues, which is going to be in late June and July. And if I still deem that to be too dangerous for me, I still hold me that option that I will be quitting last minute, as well as I think several other volunteers too.
That's interesting. So that is a resort still for you, perhaps, depending on what you see. I mean, we still don't even know if there are going to be Japanese spectators allowed in those venues. They'll be deciding that at some point this month. I'm wondering, too, Barbara, you can give us a read on this, perhaps, although you're out of the country now, but we keep hearing about public sentiment, and I'm wondering what level of support you detect in the community for these games. We've been hearing polling that Japanese don't want them canceled, but it seems what I'm reading of late is there is a growing acceptance of these games and an acceptance that they will go ahead. What is your latest thinking?
Well, opinion polls just a few weeks ago told us about 80% of the Japanese population are either for cancellation or postponement. Now, the news poll is from Yomiuri Shimbun, which is a very pro-Olympic newspaper. So I'm not 100% sure if I fully trust that change in sentiment, but they're saying because of the now more faster rollout of the vaccines, that sentiment might shift. I am not quite sure, and I look out for more surveys to come in the near future.
Well, Barbara, we'll stay in touch with you. Listen, when you're there in Hamburg, are you going to be able to get vaccinated yourself there, do you think?
Yeah, it was a very rash decision because of a family emergency. But now, since I'm here, I'm much more likely to get a vaccine here, so I'm trying.
That might give you some level of protection that you don't seem to be afforded there. So interesting. Barbara, thank you very much for giving us the volunteer perspective. And as I say, we'll keep in touch with you heading up to Tokyo 2020. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.